There has perhaps never been a Zelda game capable of inciting reactions as extreme and polarized as this one. This is The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Now, virtually every Zelda title releases to retail with the winds of hype and expectation at its back, but Wind Waker was one of the few for which the trip from development studio to store shelves was also inhibited by gusts of vocal displeasure from writers and fans who were skeptical about the game's art direction, to put it mildly. In fact, when Nintendo unveiled the first footage of the game at their Space World exposition in 2001, the trailer was met with unexpected backlash. The media's reaction to Wind Waker's graphics style was mostly negative, and the adverse response caused Nintendo to refuse to show any new footage of the game until they had a playable demo ready. Of course, this backlash was predicated on the most shallow of video game criticisms, a dismissive censure as ill-founded as it was superficial. Apparently, brightness, color, and imagination equate childishness. Unfortunately, this nonsense is the fulcrum upon which most of those extreme reactions to Wind Waker pivot. Wind Waker is an incredible gaming experience that fulfills virtually everything on the hyperbolical rubric with which people judge Zelda games, and it certainly lives up to the legacy of its exalted predecessors. But to say it exceeds them all is a bit of a stretch. And that different look is one of the things which makes Wind Waker such an outstanding Zelda title. Aside from its aesthetic charms, the game's cel-shaded graphics actually have a functional impact as well. From its facial animations to the inherent charm it provides the characters themselves, Wind Waker comes to life with more emotion and character than perhaps any Zelda release to date, even more so than the explicitly character-driven Majora's Mask. And that has everything to do with the game's beautiful graphics. A cel-shaded visual style which really seems to pop off the screen and bring Link's environment to life. Which, by the way, is again very different. Wind Waker was the second Zelda game in a row to take place somewhere other than Hyrule, the mythical kingdom the series itself is based upon. Instead, this new world is comprised of several islands scattered across a vast ocean, and on one particular island, a young boy is celebrating his birthday. As is customary for boys of this age, he commemorates the day by wearing green clothes, just like the legendary Hero of Time. Little does this boy know, he shares the same destiny. Despite what seems like an unfamiliar setting and premise, and what most certainly is an unfamiliar visual style, Wind Waker is basically built from the same trusty template as Ocarina. Link must explore his world, purge temples of the monsters within, and defeat a very familiar foe at the game's stirring and surprisingly brutal climax. He's got a sword, a bow, and all the items you'd expect from a Zelda game, and instead of riding a horse across an overworld, you'll sail across a vast ocean which feels way bigger than any Zelda game prior. Wind Waker is also built from the same Z-targeting concept as Ocarina and Majora's Mask, giving the game's combat and controls a tight and instantly familiar feel. Indeed, Wind Waker often just feels like a much prettier Ocarina of Time. With pirates. So, aside from pirates, where does the game deviate from the norm? Well, in plenty of areas, most notably in terms of the additions it makes to Link's skills with the blade. Wind Waker adds a countering mechanic to the traditional Z-targeting combat, giving Link the ability to perform some dazzling feats with his sword when the attack button is pushed at just the right moment. More so than any Zelda before it, Wind Waker gives you the feeling Link really is a swordsman worthy of legend. Another irony for a game that's supposedly so childish. There are also a few new items for Link to use as well, including a parachute-like Deku Leaf and a grappling hook with important uses both at land and sea. But not all of Wind Waker's tweaks are for the better, and that's one of the reasons it falls short of classics like Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past. Now, Zelda games are never known for being particularly difficult, but Wind Waker is really easy. In fact, it's almost too easy, which often makes it feel safe and non-confrontational. There are also far fewer temples to conquer than in past Zelda games, which sometimes makes Wind Waker feel more focused on sailing than traditional Zelda dungeon crawling. But even these complaints do very little to erode the experience. Indeed, as the controversy surrounding Wind Waker has faded, what remains is a remarkably polished and visually stunning game, which even today is a joy to explore and a refreshing contrast to the relative darkness of its siblings, Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess.